Yo, what's up? It's Driscoll. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down some OG RIDDIM, but this time instead of using malstrom, I'm going to be using SERUM as requested by some of you guys on my previous video. So without further ado, let's hear it. Alright, so as you can see, it sounds pretty close to the classic square RIDDIM bass that you would get in Malstrom. Just this time I did it using SERUM because it's essentially the same process. So I don't expect it to be a very long video just because, like I said, this is pretty much the same stuff as I did in the previous video with Malstrom. So I think it'll be quick, but yeah, let's go over the first sound. I started with this bass, it sounds like this on its own. Alright, so here's how the bass sounds without any post-processing and no effects on it. The next thing I did was adding this COM plus filter. The cutoff is on 43 Hz and the LFO1 is adding 1 to the cutoff. And as you can see over here, I'm using a macro on the cutoff position for the filter. That's one of the main elements that I'm going to be automating throughout the drop just to get the variation I like. Next, going into the effects, I started with a tube distortion with a drive at 64%. I added a flanger that we're not going to hear right now because it's on this macro. So if I activate it, this is how it sounds. I have the rates on half note, depth 24%, feedback is at 22%, and the phase is all the way down. I'm only using this macro for variation purposes. And then I have this phaser on half note rates. I have the depth at 25%, the frequency is at 115, the feedback is at 55%, and the phase is all the way down with the mix all the way up. And then I'm also utilizing a macro on the frequency just to get some more variation. So now the movement that you're hearing on the first section of this patch comes from these two automations. So the first one is on macro 1, which is the comms filter cutoff position, and the second one is on macro 2, which is the frequency position of the phaser. That third automation here is just a pitch where I'm pitching it down a little bit. So now let's go over the post-processing. So the same thing I did for the Malstrom bass, I started with 2 downwards OTTs, meaning that I removed all the upward compression. It sounds like this now. This is followed by a disperser, then an EQ cutting out the low end and boosting a bit the mids and the highs, then a delay on 8 notes. I'm automating the feedback and the dry and wet knobs just for the end of the whole 8-bar section because I want to have some feedback from the delay going into the next section of the drop. Then I added this reverb. And just a final EQ, making sure all the low end on the sides is cut out. And that's basically the first patch, really. Then the rest of it is just playing around with the automation, with the comms filter settings, with the phaser settings, the flanger settings, and that's basically it. That's how I come up with different sounds only using that same patch. So this is how it sounds on the second part. So as you can see, I'm just repeating this downward motion for the comms filter all the way through the end. And on the phaser frequency, I'm going from the bottom, going up a little bit, just creating a movement on the whole section. And here, these two automation is just opening up the delay. The second sound that we have is this one. Alright, so this is essentially the same patch, really. I just duplicated it. The difference is that on this one, I added this delay on 9.73 milliseconds, and I'm automating the mix of it just because I want to create some more metallic sound to it. But other than that, it's basically the same stuff. Keep playing around with the comps filter, with the phaser frequency, and the delay is right in here, and I can activate it where I need it. So this is what all these automations are. The first one is just the delay that I just explained in SERUM. It's activated at 100% for this whole section. I changed the comp filter settings, I changed the phaser settings, and this is just a little pitch bend for the beginning of the phrase. Then for the second part, using that same patch, I'm removing the delay. And again, I changed the comp filter settings, the phaser, and a little bit of pitch movement at the beginning here. That's pretty much it. All the post-processing is exactly the same as it was on the first bass. So the key to OG RIDDIM like that, at least for me, is just to make a simple sound, but make sure you have a lot of option for variation. So any combination of a certain setting for the comps filter and another settings for the phaser is giving you tons of possibilities for variation, so you just gotta play around with this. And then for the last section, as I already have two bass sounds that give me a lot of variation options already, I just decided to alternate between the two. So I'm just going back and forth with the first bass sound and the second bass sound. The only other stuff I did is, again, I changed the comps filter settings and I changed the phaser settings for the first bass sound, and for the second bass sound, same thing. I changed the comp filter settings and I changed the phaser settings. So this is the settings I have for the first bass sound that I used in that section. And this is the settings I have for the second bass sound I use for that section. So yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say because it's just the same process. The key thing to remember here is that you want to make a simple sound and then you want to add effects that you will be able to modify every time to create different variation. This is what the comps filter is for, this is what the phaser is for, and this is what the delay is for in my sounds for today's video. You can always do more. You could, for example, resample that bass and stretch it and use different warp modes, or you could resample that bass and throw it in a granulizer. This is actually what I did for that little sound here that's playing in the middle section of my drop. And to make this sound, I just resampled this bass and I put it in a granular synthesizer. I'm using the one from the Reason Rack plugin. You can use whatever you want. And I just play around with the grain spacing, the formant setting. I choose a section that I like. I could mess around with the speed and just come up with a variation using that sound. So it's playing at the same time as this sound. And in the post-processing, it only has a little bit of EQing and just a short reverb. So yeah, that's basically it. So I hope you guys liked the video. I hope you got some value out of it. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel to not miss any of the future videos. Thank you so much for watching. This is Driscoll, and I'll see you guys in the next one.